Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into my channel, Journey to the Truth and Total Randomness. Today, this is probably going to be a long video. There is a lot of material to cover, and one thing, I started researching my video. I was going to do a Google map on the migration of refugees throughout from Syria up into Europe, and basically a map of the United States with all the locations where they're going to be sending these Syrian refugees. And as I was doing it, I started stumbling upon other information and such, and plus I had other information in the back of my mind, and then I'd start seeing things and things started clicking, and all of a sudden my short little video became this really long video, and it's really important. It's probably one of the most important videos I've ever made so far. And I think the first thing you need to realize is that we've actually been at war with an entity that we weren't even aware of. And we've actually been at war with this entity. Well, they've been at war with us. It's a silent war, and it'll make sense to you as I go on and explain it to you. It's basically an enemy within that is slowly taking over our government and slowly influencing the outcomes and the horrible wars and such in this world over the last almost 60 years. If you've never I know there's so much going on and you don't have time to keep track of everything. There's so many other cool things to watch online and talk to with your other friends about, like with UFOs and secret government planes and all these conspiracy theories, end of the world stuff. But this is actual reality stuff I'm going to be talking to you about, and this is what is actually going on. How many of you have ever heard of the OIC? You might have heard about it a few times in the media and stuff. They'll make a short reference to it, but they never go into detail what the OIC really is. And if you know what the OIC is, I'll tell you, it's the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And this group was actually formed in 1928, and it was formed in Egypt. Now, today the OIC, that's basically an acronym left for most politicians in positions of power to know. Us normal citizens, we don't really bother ourselves with that type of information. But if you learn what the OIC it really is and what they're about, it'll totally make sense. Like everything that's going on in the world today will totally make sense to you. You'll understand why the OIC is considered a terrorist group in Russia, and you'll understand why it's considered a terrorist group in China and Saudi Arabia and Syria and Libya. What I'm basically leading up to, and before Obama was even elected president, there were organizations and groups accusing Obama of having ties to Muslim extremists, and actually him possibly being a Muslim himself, and that being his true faith. And a lot of us, we just scoffed at it. We're like, oh, ha ha ha, that's just bullshit being made up and fabricated by Republicans to make them look bad and stuff, and we don't buy it. Well, once I explain everything to you, you're not going to be laughing at that any longer. And just through Obama's actions, everything he's done so far, it everything he basically has done supports the fact that he is a Muslim, that he supports the OIC. And this is the thing about the OIC. Like, they are so extreme that even other Muslims are against them. This is why we had the situation with the Arab Spring. Egypt had to overthrow the OIC, and that's why. How can I explain this to you? Because there's just so much material here. The OIC, even though it did establish itself in Egypt, over time, the mainstream Muslims determined that this was not good for them. Their way of thinking was dangerous, and even Saudi Arabia, who used to support the OIC, no longer does. And even the Saudi Arabian king and princes, they have claimed the OIC to be a terrorist group, and they are basically to be killed on sight if they're caught. And the OIC has their methodology here, their way of thinking is to make Sharia law the law of the planet. And the way they want to do that is they want to infiltrate governments, not from the bottom, but at the top, and change everything. They want to slowly take over countries and convert them to Muslim. They want to Islamize them. That's what they call it, Islamize them. This is why in Russia, that the Muslim Brotherhood was considered a terrorist organization, and any formation of an OIC group in Russia is against their law. Now, they've found cracks in Western societies because we have a democratic system, and we try to how can I say it? We try to honor the beliefs and faiths of other religions and cultures. Well, they see this as a weakness, and they're attacking this weakness. And if you read up on the OIC, I'm going to provide a link below. It's a Wikipedia, and it's long. But if you take the time to read it, I'm not going to sit here and read it to you because it would take a long time. But if you take the time to read it, everything's going to start making sense to you. You're going to realize why Obama, if you go off the theory that I'm putting out here to you, that he is a Muslim and that he supports the Muslim Brotherhood, everything will make sense to you why he defunded Egypt. He defunded Egypt's military after they took out the Muslim Brotherhood. You'll figure out why he is not doing anything in Syria when they are having a refugee crisis there. Well, not even a refugee crisis, basically a genocide crisis there. You'll realize why he's providing weapons and arms to ISIS, who's trying to overthrow the current government in Syria. You'll realize why Putin's getting involved in Syria. And you'll realize why China's getting involved in Syria. And then you'll realize why there's a refugee crisis in the first place. And it'll even explain why Ahmed Mohammed, the fake clock bomb maker, was invited to the White House. Because Sudan was one of the countries that the OIC actually infiltrated from the top and slowly took control of that country from the top to the bottom. It was their first success story, basically. And guess who the father of Ahmed Mohammed? Guess where he's from? And as you can read in any article, he was trying to run for president of Sudan. This is why Ahmed Mohammed was invited to the White House, because of his ties with the OIC and his father's ties with the OIC. Now, the reason I said we've been at a secret war with these guys, well, not mainly even us, but the OIC, is because they established the first OIC group in America back in 1962. Well, actually 1963. But this leads back to President Eisenhower's farewell speech when he warned us about the military-industrial complex. If you pay attention to his speech, he also warns us about external and spiritual threats to the United States in our way of freedom, in our way of thinking. And I think when he made that comment about spiritual threats, he was talking about the OIC. This is a very large group of extreme Muslims who believe that Sharia law should be the law of the land, and that all countries, no matter who they are, those laws should be honored in every country. Let me get a drink here. This is going to take a while. I don't want to get lost on track. I have all this material in my head. It's just, I don't want it to get mixed up and sound confusing here. This will even explain, like, the situation in Benghazi. So let me start off with an article I started to write here. Because I was trying to focus all my thoughts, and I didn't want to get lost here. Isn't it strange how last month the news was all about the Black Lives Movement, and now this month it's the Syrian Muslim refugee crisis? Just back in November 2014, the parents of Michael Brown were addressing the United Nations about how unfairly their son was treated, even though it was proven in a court of law that Officer Darren Wilson was not guilty and used reasonable force to protect himself from Michael Brown, who just got done robbing a convenience store. The parents addressed their concerns on racism in the United States. Now we have a Muslim refugee crisis this month, and Ahmed Mohammed is now addressing the United Nations in New York about how unfairly he was treated by bigots and with badges and a racist teacher who profiled him as a terrorist because he brought a pencil box filled with manufactured alarm clock guts to school, which by all means at first glance looked like a suitcase bomb. Seriously, the only missing component was C4, but I guess the teacher was too concerned to notice after the first glance. Never mind the fact that our own Department of Homeland Security encourages the public to report unusual activity. Never mind the fact that Ahmed's sister, Aisha Mohammed, was suspended from school a few years earlier for making a poor joke about bombing the school. And never mind the fact that two Muslims armed with guns tried to infiltrate and shoot participants in the Draw Muhammad contest just 25 miles away from Ahmed's school. Yes, folks, we are living in a matrix where right is wrong and wrong is right. Now we have a refugee crisis that was designed in the United States and manufactured in Germany. This refugee crisis is a culmination of smaller experiments conducted over the past decade right here in the United States. I was lucky enough to witness this experiment firsthand since I attended Penn State University during the beginning stages. It all started when the current mayor of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, Jack Monday, had the excellent idea to post advertisements in New York City informing immigrants and illegal immigrants to come to Hazleton, PA. Does that sound familiar? It should, because Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, did the same thing with the Syrian refugees. The ads that Jack Monday posted were good-paying jobs, low cost of living. Try finding this information on the internet. I tried, but I couldn't. I guess it's supposed to be a secret. After these ads were posted, that's when immigrants and illegal immigrants started coming into the city of Hazleton by the thousands. And I'm saying thousands because I was there and I witnessed it. It was unbelievable. It started off as a trickle and turned into a tidal wave. I remember when I first moved into my apartment there on Maple Street, the entire street was occupied with nice, white Catholic families. No problems, no troubles whatsoever. After 3 years, the only white people living on my street were me, my landlords, and the little old lady from Italy. At the same time, Penn State Hazleton had more dorms built and made it a point to make students live on campus. I can't blame them. They didn't want their money trees getting raped, robbed, beaten, and or murdered. See, that was the worst part of this immigration nightmare. Crime in the town of Hazleton, PA skyrocketed. Rapes skyrocketed, and then came the murders and the drugs. Even my landlord got into an altercation with the immigrants across the street for playing their music too loud. He was in his 50s. His reward for trying to teach them common courtesy was a socket wrench over his head, which knocked him unconscious. It was hard to believe that a small, quiet city occupied by devout Catholics and Italians could turn into what it did in 3 years. The bar I frequented there even changed its entertainment schedule to accommodate the immigrants, starting a salsa night. Most of the illegal immigrants couldn't even speak English. They would harass the white women in the bar, grabbing their butts or breasts, which led to altercations and fight. The bar eventually closed. I guess the owner got fed up with all the trouble. The immigrants showed total disrespect and callous for the community. Then, on my last day in Hazleton, as I said my final farewell and I graduated, well, they found a dead body in the trunk of a car in a bowling alley parking lot. Over 10,000 Hispanics and others migrated to the town of Hazleton over a short span of 3 years. So imagine your town increasing in population by 10,000 people in just like less than 3 years. And imagine half of them not even being able to speak English. Well, 3 years later, Mayor Lou Barletta in Hazleton hit the national news when Barletta introduced the Legal Immigration Relief Act, which the city council approved unanimously. The ordinance allowed the city to deny a business permit to employers who hired illegal immigrants and gave the authority to fine landlords up to $1,000 for leasing to illegal immigrants, and that was $1,000 per illegal immigrant. The act also made English the official language of Hazleton, prohibiting city employees from translating documents to any language without official authorization. In response, the ACLU and the Puerto Rican League Legal Defense and Educational Fund sued in federal district court to block the ordinance. In July 2007, District Court Judge James M. Munley ruled that the act was unconstitutional for interfering with federal immigration laws and violating the due process of individuals, employers, and landlords. The ruling was upheld on appeal to the United States Courts of Appeal on September 9, 2010. In a public statement shortly after the decision, Barletta vowed to appeal. Thankfully, Barletta's actions led to 5,000 of the immigrants leaving Hazleton and brought the town back to some normalcy. But if you remember, the personal testimonies of indigenous residents who suffered at the hands of these illegal immigrants were not reported on. The increase in crime was not reported on. The media simply portrayed, and the liberal media I should say, portrayed the town of Hazleton as racist bigots. I can tell you from personal experience that this was not true. Hazleton had a lot of assholes, but it had a lot of good people who just wanted to get along. The immigrants did not want to integrate, they just wanted to take over. In the movie Obama's America 2016, political commentator Dinesh D'Souza made some startling predictions about the second term of Barack Obama. One of his predictions was that he wants global distribution of wealth. So how did he accomplish this? He doubled the national debt to redistribute wealth to Kuwait, China, and Saudi Arabia. Prior to Obama, most of the debt was owed to Americans. Now a little over 1/3 of that debt is owed to other countries. He wanted to shrink the influence of foreign policy. So basically he wanted to shrink America's influence over foreign policy. And he's been doing that ever since he's been in. He's been weakening our allies, and he's been strengthening the enemies of our allies. Number 4, Obama supports the Muslim Brotherhood. It's the oldest and most powerful organization of radical Islam. they come to power and Obama didn't seem to be concerned. Now, what I meant by that was in Egypt during the Arab Spring, like, they did come to power. They put a president in that was supported by Obama, but the military overthrew that president, and they basically arrested all these OIC members, and they executed a whole bunch of them, like 500 at a time. And like, Obama just seemed fluxed. He seemed like it was like depressing for him. And then when the Muslim Brotherhood, when the Muslim Brotherhood was forced out by the military, he seems fluxed and cut spending to Egypt military. So Egypt's punishment for forcing out the Muslim Brotherhood was that he cut their budget. He stopped providing government funds for their military to combat this terrorist group that is recognized by most countries in the world as a terrorist group. In addition to that, just a few years prior to that, he didn't support the democratic uprising in Iran. He stayed out of it. And then, of course, that democratic uprising was crushed. And there are OIC groups in Iran. As I said, he has no interest in weakening enemies. However, he has been weakening allies. He did nothing to stop the genocide in Syria. Maybe that's because Syria considered the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group, just like Russia, just like China, just like Saudi Arabia. He had Yaqi Gaddafi killed. Gaddafi was someone who was keeping the Muslim Brotherhood in Libya in check. I mean, once he was killed, this is what started this crap with Syria and all this stuff. Everything just went to shit, like, after that. Obama is basically not a fool. He has a hidden agenda, and like, there's no way he could have made all these mistakes. Everything he's done so far supports the Muslim Brotherhood. My thing is, he's distributing wealth by redistributing populations. Many think that Fast and Furious was a Bush initiative because Obama said so. And Obama actually did come out. He said that Fast and Furious was something the Bush administration created, but that was not true. In September 2012, Obama said that Fast and Furious had begun under the previous administration. In reality, Fast and Furious began in October 2009. This program provided weapons that were confiscated from criminals off the streets of America and gave them to Mexican drug cartels. This helped escalate violence in Mexico, therefore increasing the number of legal aliens entering through America's borders, because these people had no choice. They couldn't fight back. I mean, you had this cartel that was already strong and weaponized, and you have Obama giving them more weapons. And I bet they were giving them money too on top of that. It's the same recipe he is now using in Syria. With help, though, from Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and Chancellor Angela Merkel, by providing terrorists with weapons. He made the situation in Syria so bad that Syrians have no choice but to run. Sorry, I gotta get a drink here. Merkel's role was to advertise to Syrians who lost their homes to come to Germany with the promise of welfare benefits, and that the first 800,000 would be given the opportunity to partake in their social security program. Meaning, when they get old enough, they can withdraw Social Security, money that doesn't even belong to them. Well, this message wasn't only heard by Syrian moderate Muslims, it was heard by Africans and radical Islamic terrorists, who are now tagging along with Syrian refugees. The actions of Obama and Merkel have put a huge strain on the surrounding European nations. Fear is at an all-time high. Now, the Africans that are coming, you probably think, oh, no problem there. But the OIC, as I said before, Sudan, they have infiltrated Algeria and other African countries. So these extreme these Muslim Islamic extremists are basically all over Africa, especially the northern hemisphere, and they're the ones that are coming to Sweden and Norway and Germany and Spain, and even Spain. They are slowly being taken over by Muslims. France, they have the no-go zones. When that first story came out, the Democrats came out and said, and the liberal media came out and said, that's a bunch of bullshit. Well, that's not true. You know, we come to find out that is the truth. Cops, paramedics, you know, citizens of France, they don't go to these no-go zones because they know they'll get attacked. The women will get raped or assaulted. Even when they had a soccer team from Israel come to France, these extreme Muslims, you know, the ones that say they can integrate with other societies, they rioted. Like, nobody was actually even allowed to watch the game. I mean, that's how bad it got. Now, in an article from CSNBC, German Chancellor Angela Merkel was overheard confronting Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg over incendiary posts on the social network. Bloomberg reported on Sunday, amid complaints from her government about anti-immigrant posts in the midst of Europe's refugee crisis. On the sidelines of a United Nations luncheon on Saturday, Merkel was caught on a live mic, which they consider a hot mic, pressing Zuckerberg about the social media posts about the wave of Syrian refugees entering Germany, the publication reported. The Facebook CEO was overheard responding that we need to do some work on curtailing anti-immigrant posts about the refugee crisis. Are you working on this? Merkel asked in English, to which Zuckerberg replied in the affirmative before the transmission was disrupted. Now, why do you think these folks would want to curtail the negative impacts of these refugees by censoring it on the largest social media platform in the world? Well, that's because the United States is the next stop for these refugees. I mean, really, what is the grand plan here, and why is it so important that the German-born chancellor would sacrifice her own culture to make it happen? An old woman who doesn't happen to have any children, by the way. Some folks believe the German government is doing it because the current population or labor force is declining. A study pointed out a 14% increase in sterile men in Germany. Basically a dying population. Oh well, you gotta replace them with something else, right? Meanwhile, 6 months ago, ISIS is stating that they will invade the European nations, while other extreme Islamists are openly speaking about taking over the countries through propagation, a waiting game basically where they repopulate the surrounding countries of the world with Muslims. This isn't an old plan. This isn't a new plan. Like I said, this was a plan they've had since long time ago, like since back in 1928, and this plan started in the United States in '63, and they've been doing it slowly ever since. I guess you could say this is a form of genocide. I guess you can't have a one world government without having a one world religion first, right? Gosh, it's almost like ISIS knew that this opportunity was coming to make the prediction 6 months prior. So let me read you this conversation between Merkel and a concerned blonde German woman. This will make you turn your head. I just gotta grab a drink here. And this is starts out with the blonde girl, the blonde German woman talking. Madam Chancellor, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. A minute ago, you were mentioning the responsibility we all have in terms of how we should all deal with all the refugee chaos. But one of our responsibilities is also to protect our own citizens in Europe, and I'm speaking especially about the refugees from Syria and similar countries from from where now even more people with an Islamic background come into our country. And I believe that the gentleman addressed earlier is legitimate, that there is great fear here in Europe because Islamization seems to proceed and grow stronger. So I'm asking you, how do you want to protect Europe? And in that regard, how do you propose to protect our own culture from this? And this is the Chancellor. Oh, I think first and foremost that Islamism and Islamic terror are unfortunately a phenomenon. Like it's this rare thing, a phenomenon operating predominantly in Syria and Libya and in northern Iraq. Remember Libya? Gaddafi? Remember Libya? Gaddafi, the guy that Obama had killed? Because 250 people, OIC guys got killed by Gaddafi in northern Iraq, and to which unfortunately the European Union has contributed a myriad of fighters as well. And therefore we just can't sit here and say that this is a phenomenon that has nothing to do with us, because those are people, sometimes very young people, who grew up in our countries, and this is where we bear also a responsibility. Secondly, fear has never been a good advisor, neither in our personal lives nor our society. Cultures and societies that are shaped by fear, without doubt, not get a grip on the future. And third, of course, we have this debate that a lot of Muslims also have, in which we debate whether Islam even belongs to Germany or not. But I'm finding it that when we have 4 million Muslims in this country, it's really not debatable whether Muslims belong to Germany, but Islam doesn't, or whether Islam also belongs to Germany. I see there are these worries, but I have to say that we all have these chances and all these liberties to practice our own religion as well, insofar as we are practicing it and believe in it. So if I'm lacking in something in that, I am not suggesting that someone who practices Islam is at fault for that. We should have the courage as Christians to enter into a dialogue then. And while we're talking about tradition, maybe please go to church every once in a while, or become a tad more versed in the Bible, and maybe be able to just explain a painting in the church. Now this is the off-wall thing she goes off on. Like this woman that asked her this question didn't even state that she was a Christian. She didn't state if she was a Muslim. She didn't state she was an atheist. This chancellor just assumed and just went off on this lady. Or, let me go on this conversation. Let me read the rest of this to you. I'll start in the middle again. And maybe be able to just explain a painting in the church, or at least be able to explain what the meaning of Pentecost is. So there, I just have to say that a lot of people's knowledge about the Christian Occident leaves a lot to be desired. But then to come back and complain about how Muslims know more about the Quran than do about the Bible, I find that very curious. Maybe this debate will make us want to go back and encourage us to gain more knowledge about our roots. So far, I find this debate extremely defensively minded. Sure, one has to prepare against the terrorist danger, but let us all not forget just how rich European history is of dramatic and gruesome conflict and war. We should be really careful when we complain. Lost my track. We should be really careful when we complain if somewhere else something bad is happening. Sure, we have to stand up against that, but we have absolutely no ground to stand on to show haughty arrogance towards others. I have to say that as Chancellor of Germany. So, does this speech sound familiar? It should. It was similar to Obama's speech in regard to how barbaric the Christians were in the past and how they treated non-believers. So here is this ideology that the past aggressions of a group or entity is a valid reason to justify today's actions, making a group of folks feel guilty for the actions of their forefathers and mothers hundreds of years ago, actions and decisions that had no where people had no say in or control of. So I guess the big question here is, what past actions of the United States does Obama hold its current U.S. citizens accountable for? So it seems like Chancellor Merkel here, she's just willing to throw away the culture of Germany She's willing to let it take over by Muslim control. Extremists on top of that. Sorry, I had to get a drink. And it seems like maybe she herself has already converted over to Islam. Even though she doesn't show any sign of it, but I mean, what's the purpose? Why would she do that? Let's see here. What I'm starting to lead up to, it seems like, and as stated in the movie, Obama's 2016, it seems like he's trying to redistribute wealth throughout the world. And he figures one way of doing that is to redistribute populations. Put the poor with the rich, because somehow he'll think the money from the rich is going to rub off and fall down and fall into the hands of the poor. Here's another example of Obama doing population redistribution. Yet another example of Obama's possible plan to redistribute wealth via popular redistribution. The Supreme Court ruled on Thursday, June 25, 2015, that policies that segregate minorities in poor neighborhoods, even if they do so intentionally, violate the Fair Housing Act. In a 5-4 decision, the court ruled that the so-called desperate impact claims that challenge practices that adversely affect minorities, can be brought under the Fair Housing Act. However, the court warned against remedies that impose outright racial quotas, a sign that desperate impact claims must be brought cautiously. In writing the majority opinion, Justice Kennedy acknowledged that the disparate impact standard has worked to combat systematic discrimination. Much progress remains to be made in our nation's continuing struggle against racial isolation. Kennedy wrote, "In striving to achieve our historical commitment to creating an integrated society," see, it's all about this integration. Not assimilation anymore, it's integration. "We must remain wary of policies that reduce homeowners to nothing more than their race. But since the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968, and against the backdrop of desperate impact liability in nearly every jurisdiction, many cities have become more diverse. The FHA must play an important part in avoiding the Kerner Commission's grim prophecy that our nation is moving towards two societies, one black, one white, separate but equal." So, to basically summarize what I've just said to you, and this is where you should get concerned, is what Obama's doing is he's weakening the countries that are against the OIC. On top of that, he is also weakening America's political influence over the world, because we are the dominant influence over the world right now. By doing so, that's going to make it easier for the OIC to establish their influence over the rest of the countries. And creating this refugee crisis is a great way of expediting that process. These Muslims, these extreme radical terrorists, they're cowards. They can't organize a group and an army and fight on their own. It's been proven time and time again over history. Even when the Nazis tried to collaborate with these Muslim groups, they disregarded them because they were just they were fat, lazy. They didn't want to listen. They didn't want to, they'd run at the first sign of shot and stuff like that. They were unorganized in that. So, but the way they're trying to take over is through infiltrating countries, establishing their little groups and towns and stuff across that country, and then multiplying and multiplying until they're considered citizens of that country, and then they can vote in their own people into positions of power. And then once they do that, then it's all downhill for that country. The Islamicization process, as they like to call it, that commences, and it's just it's just a waiting game. That's all it is. And now we have Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, conspiring with Angela Merkel to censor, anti-refugee stories, comments, anything on the world's largest social media platform. And here is another example of how Obama and the Democrats have weakened the influence of America when it comes to foreign policy. Let me see if I can find this here. I have another story here I'm saving for last. And this has to do with the internet. The U.S. transfer of internet controls years in the making, fueled by foreign pressure. The decision was announced nonchalantly in trademark Washington fashion on Friday afternoon. The U.S. government will cede its last bit of control over the internet. And thanks to Obama, the government has maintained that the influence through contracts with the organization that administers the internet, a Los Angeles-based nonprofit called the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN, but a Commerce Department agency announced Friday that it would relinquish control of ICANN, presumably when its contract expires in September 2015. Which is this month. The office said it wants the group to next convene global stakeholders to come up with a transition plan, a transition to what remains unknown. Global stakeholders being other countries. Those other countries being the countries that are being basically assimilated by Islam. So, anyway, let's read on. But that sudden and highly controversial decision was years in the making, and it arguably dates back close to 2 decades. Further, despite the internet being hatched in the U.S., the move to transfer control to the global community has accelerated in recent years under heavy pressure from foreign governments. It came as little surprise then that the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on Tuesday praised the U.S. Commerce Department's decision. The Secretary General takes note of this important development. A statement from Ban's office said, calling for all stakeholders to pursue a single, open, free, secure, and trustworthy internet. But whether the goal can be achieved is the big question. The decision Friday by the National Telecommunication and Information Administration, NITA, has raised concerns that in the void left by America's transfer of oversight, other nations that don't share the United States' commitment to free speech and expressions can make a grab at internet influence. Ding, 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 ding. What does the OIC want? They want to impose their Sharia law and censorship across the world. They do not agree with our free speech. They don't want people in America posting YouTube videos, anti-Islamic videos. They don't want Korans being burnt in America, and they want us to be punished, for anything anti-Islamic that we say. And this is just another step to get control of free speech and our influence. So let me read on here. FCC Commissioner Ajita Pai said Tuesday that the current model of internet governance has been a tremendous success, and he cautioned against moving too quickly to change it. Any proposal to change that model therefore demands rigorous scrutiny, including close congressional oversight. In particular, those advocating change must prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that their proposals will not increase the influence of repressive foreign governments over the internet. But they should also mention repressive foreign groups like the OIC. Pai said in a statement, "If I'm not convinced that a different governance structure would preserve internet freedom, I will strongly oppose it. Robert Atkinson, president of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, a nonpartisan tech-focused DC think tank, wrote on his organization's website that the U.S. was effectively giving up its bodyguard role. While on the surface this may seem like a simple administrative decision that gives more control over this key internet function to more stakeholders, it could actually have far-reaching negative implications for the freedom and security of the internet, he wrote. The U.S. government does not technically control ICANN, but it nevertheless maintains significant oversight through the contractual agreements the Commerce Department has with the group. ICANN manages some of the most important elements of the internet, including domain name, system, and IP addressing. Domains are those tiny suffixes at the end of internet addresses like .com and .org and .gov. The Commerce Department, whose contract with ICANN lasts through September 2015, stressed in its announcement that whatever system comes to replace the existing one will not give control to other governments. NIDIA will not accept a proposal that replaces the NIDIA role with a government-led or an intergovernmental organization solution, the official announcement said. Lawrence Strickling, Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communication and Information, simply said in explaining that shift that the timing is right to start the transition process. Yes, the timing is right to do it now when the OIC and Muslims are basically repopulating other countries with their way of thinking. Back to the article here. Strickling has been talking for years about broadening the oversight of the internet. In a July 2012 speech at the Internet Governance Forum, he discussed giving the global internet community more of a direct say in the process, and he said that the Obama administration was making a concerted effort to expand international participation. In response to criticism of Friday's announcement, Strickling reiterated that a government body will not replace the NIDIA role. Our announcement has led to some misunderstanding about our plan, with some individuals raising concerns that the U.S. government is abandoning the internet. He said in a statement, "Nothing could be further from the truth. This announcement in no way diminishes our commitment to preserving the internet as an engine for economic growth and innovation." The Committee on Energy and Commerce announced Tuesday that it will hold a hearing in the first week of April to investigate the matter, pledging to conduct aggressive oversight following the recent announcement by the Obama administration on the future of internet governance. The latest push to transition oversight began with a 2009 agreement with NIDIA and ICANN. The agency, though, noted that the goal of completely privatizing the domain name system dates back to 1997, and that the U.S. government reiterated that goal when it partnered with ICANN a year later. But international pressure was undoubtedly been mounting in recent years, only to be fueled by anger over NSA spying, which by itself has little to do with ICANN. Some governments repeatedly have pushed for an internet oversight body within the United Nations. To adamant objections from the U.S. lawmakers, the process formally started in 2003 when the UN agreed to study bringing in more international involvement. That report, released in 2005, said no individual government should play the primary role in overseeing the internet. So that's leading to a privatized group, which could be infiltrated by the OIC. This led to proposals to create UN-linked governance bodies with which U.S. officials oppose. The UN's International Telecommunications Union also held a major conference in Dubai in late 2020 to address these and other issues, amid concern about the UN and its multitude of member states asserting more authority. The House and Senate overwhelmingly passed a resolution advocating a global internet free from government control. The resolution was a direct message to the UN, as countries like Russia, China, and Sudan try to undermine the current structure. Nevertheless, Edward Snowden's revelations about NSA activities subsequently increased pressure. I think they meant to say substantially increased pressure on the U.S. But Daniel Castro, a senior analyst with the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, wrote on the group's blog that NSA controversy is a pretext. While the NSA revelations have highly angered many people around the world, they have nothing to do with the internet governance. But for most people, they don't know that. They blame, they feel that an arbiter should come in and basically handle the internet and not the government because of all this NSA spying bullshit, because the NSA was spying on all these governments. But the thing is, Edward Snowden just happened to come out around at the right time, and that's why, I've said in previous videos, Snowden coming out of nowhere with releasing these secrets, these secret documents and stuff. I just always assumed myself that was deliberately planned and instigated. I mean, that was something they let happen, and now we're seeing what the reason for that was, and that was to give up control of the internet to a third-party group, hopefully not government body or whatever, but it helped making that decision easier, especially for the Obama administration. So, while the NSA revelations have highly angered many people around the world, they have nothing to do with the internet governance. The U.S. Department of Commerce has not once abused its oversight of ICANN to aid the intelligence community, he wrote, adding, and if the Obama administration gives away its oversight of the internet, it will be gone forever. Now, if you were paying attention to what I said, let's go back to this part right here. The latest push to transition oversight began with a 2009 agreement between NEDIA and ICANN. The agency, though, noted that the goal of completely privatizing the domain name system dates back to 1997, and that the U.S. government reiterated that goal when it partnered with ICANN a year later. Now, who was our president back in 1997? Another Democratic president by the name of Bill Clinton, who was married to Hillary Rodham Clinton at the time. Now, the First Lady, Rodham Clinton, Hillary, she had a little administrative assistant. That administrative assistant goes by the name of Uma Abedin. Uma Abedin is the woman that was married to Mr. Weiner, the gentleman we all heard about in the news, who was having sexual relations with women online. I don't think there was any physical altercation that I recall, but he was basically, having sex messages and stuff like that going on, and sharing nude photos and all this other kind of stuff. But under the guidance of Hillary, we've learned that this Uma Abedin decided to stay with her husband, just like Hillary did with Bill Clinton, because you never know when that might come in handy down the road. So the reason I bring up Uma Abedin and this wanting to give up the control of the internet back in 1997, she was accused of being a part of the Muslim Brotherhood. In a letter dated June 13, 2012 to the State Department Inspector General, 5 Republican members of Congress claim that Abedin has 3 family members, her late father, her mother, and her brother, all connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, operatives and or organizations. Those signing the letters were Michelle Bachmann, representative of Minnesota, Trent Franks, representative of Arizona, Louis Gohmert, representative of Texas, Thomas J. Rooney, representative of Florida, and Lynn Westmoreland, representative of Georgia. The claims in the letter were widely rejected and condemned by a variety of sources and were generally labeled as conspiracy theory. That convenient term you can always use if you're a politician to get out of any type of trouble or situation that you could possibly be in. Just like Hillary Clinton did with the email scandal at the beginning, she was labeling it as a conspiracy theory. So don't take it seriously. It's just a conspiracy theory. The Washington Post called the allegations paranoid, a baseless attack, and a smear. Republican senators led by John McCain stated the letter and the report offer not one instance of an action, a decision, or a public position that UMA has taken while at the State Department that would lend credence to the charge that she is promoting anti-American activities within our government, the OIC. The Seattle Times compared the letter's accusations to the witch hunts of Joseph McCarthy, calling the claims unsupported assaults by and an unthinking zealot. The Anti-Defamation League condemned the letter as well, referring to it as conspiratorial, and saying that the representatives involved should stop trafficking in anti-Muslim conspiracy theories. Biden was subsequently placed under police protection after she received threats of violence possibly connected to the allegations. Now, in recent news, we just had the Reverend Wright. If you don't know who the Reverend Wright is, or if you forget who that is, his name is Jeremiah Wright, and he was Obama's pastor for the last 20 years. And then videos leaked online of his outrageous claims of, how can I say it? Of like goddamn America, and basically kind of like a hate speech type of thing towards whites and such. And what I find it funny is most people don't realize that Jeremiah Wright was actually a United States Marine, and even though he does hold some extreme views, he is a Christian. And now an article is leaked online of the Reverend White speaking to, let me see, he spoke to a gentleman by the name of Klein, Ed Klein. And let me read this article to you quick. Reverend Jeremiah White made it comfortable for Obama to accept Christianity without having to renounce his Islamic background. The notion that Obama is secretly a Muslim has dodged the president since before he was elected. Author Ed Klein the other day provided another piece of the puzzle about Obama's real religious beliefs by the way of Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Now, this is the same Jeremiah Wright that put Obama on a pedestal and was praising him, as the first black president. And you can find these speeches online of how highly he spoke of Obama. So I guess the question is, why is he now trying to throw Obama under the bus? Klein, and I'll go back to the article here. Klein, who was speaking Tuesday on the Sean Hannity radio show, discussed his interviews with Wright, the controversial pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, Illinois. Wright was Obama's pastor for 20 years, but the two apparently became estranged when Obama ran for president and some of Wright's radical sermons came to light. Klein told Hannity, "The Reverend Wright told me on tape Obama came to him and said, 'I need some spiritual advice. I don't know exactly who I am.' The Reverend Wright said, and this is on tape, 'Well, we know your Islam background and you have that, but what you need now is some coaching on Christianity.' And I asked the Reverend Wright, I asked the Reverend Wright, did you convert him from being a Muslim to a Christian? He said, 'Well, I don't know if I could go that far, but I can tell that I made it comfortable for him to accept Christianity without having to renounce his Islamic background.' Now, Obama has insisted that he is a Christian, but his infrequent church attendance, apparent indifference towards events such as the annual day of prayer, or even meeting with Christian pastors, and his clear embrace of all things Islamic, have served to cast doubts on his real views. Just another example, like how he didn't attend the march to honor the victims of the shootings there over in France, when those editors and those writers and such all got killed by Muslim extremists. If, as the conversation with Wright seems to indicate, Obama reached some point in his thinking where he could conflate Christianity and Islam, accepting both, it could explain much about his personality and record. Despite assertions, mostly from the left, that Muslims and Christians all worship the same God, there are a few faiths that are less compatible. Christianity acknowledges that Jesus Christ is God, one and the same. Although there have been many historical examples of failing to live up to his own standards, Christianity is known for the admonition to love your neighbor as yourself. Islam, on the other hand, was founded by a self-proclaimed prophet who turned to banditry and finally became a full-fledged warlord, spreading his new faith by the sword, whereas Christianity calls on followers to spread the gospel by teaching by example. And this goes back to that movie I spoke to you about, The Innocent of Muslims, and they actually portrayed Muhammad for what he really was, and that's why all these Muslim extremists became upset, because we spoke the truth about the movie. Basically spoke the truth about Muhammad and what he really was. Now I'm going to get to that topic later, and this is going to blow your mind too, because you probably never heard about it. Now, if Obama clings to the view that both of these viewpoints are compatible, then it is a schismatic balancing act at the root of his personality that I imagine must require some considerable mental energy to maintain. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. Matthew was referring to God and wealth, but the warning may apply broadly here. And it has clear ramifications for a presidency. All the liberties, traditions, and history that produced this country are predicated on the Judeo-Christian worldview, in which humans are made to be free, their rights come from God, and God has made a world that reflects his constancy, predictability, and ultimately love for mankind. The Islamic worldview is one in which Allah is violent and capricious, changing his mind and rules from day to day to suit his prophet's proclivities, and humans are expendable creatures whose only purpose is to please Allah. So the question regarding Obama isn't what he thinks he believes, but which masters has he chosen in his heart. So, why would this reverend, who's an extremist himself by all means when it comes to Christianity, throw, his idol that he looked up to in the past under the bus like this? Because I think the Reverend finally understands how dubious Obama really is. He understands that Christianity is not in Obama's future. Obama really isn't here to lift the black man out of poverty and give them equal rights. This all comes back to the OIC. This is all about bringing Islam to the United States, and there is no room for Christianity when there is Islam. So Obama basically has chosen his path. He's chosen the OIC. He's chosen Islam. He's chosen to worship Muhammad. And even though this pastor is an extremist himself, he too, I have a feeling, fears what Obama really and actually stands for. Obama sending White House aides to the funerals of black criminals, and that is just a show. He doesn't really support the black community, and his past actions have proven that anyway. And all he's done is try to raise racial tensions in this country to keep us fighting among each other. Keep the Christian blacks and the Christian whites fighting amongst each other, while Islam slowly creeps through the back door to take over everything. That is what he's doing. in another, if you don't buy that, let me share something else with you. This is from the White, and you probably haven't heard about this in the news because this really didn't make mainstream media, but this is from the White House National Security Council. And what they did was they wrote a report on the current president, President Obama. Let me read some tad bits here for you. White House National Security Council spokeswoman Bernadette Meehan declined to comment on PSD-11. That's the name of the report. We have nothing for you on this, she said. The policy of backing the Muslim Brotherhood is outlined in a secret directive called Presidential Study Directive 11, or PSD-11. So it stands for Presidential Study Directive. The directive was produced in 2011 and outlines administration support for political reform in the Middle East and North Africa, according to officials familiar with the classified study. So it's a study, and it's a study basically showing how Obama has been supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in the Mid-Eastern countries. This is a government agency that's actually doing performed a secret study on the President of the United States, showing him basically as a threat to our country and to the Constitution. So, if you're listening to everything I have to say, the evidence, the actions of this Obama is pointing more to the fact that he is a Muslim, that he practices Islam. And I'm going to throw some more facts at you. Here's a little article. Muslim Brotherhood infiltrates Obama administration. 6 American Islamist activists who work with the Obama administration are Muslim Brotherhood operatives who enjoy strong influence over U.S. policy. These are men that Obama actually works with and has conversations with in regards to the equality of Muslims, and they're all known members of the Brotherhood. Atif Alakan, Mohammed El-Abiri, Rashad Hussein, Salam al-Mariyati, Ayman Muhammad Majid, and Ibu Patel. Those are the 6 people there that are part of the Muslim Brotherhood. If some of you were confused why Obama traded Bo Bergdorf for 5 of the worst terrorists that were in Guantanamo Bay, all you have to do is look at Bo Bergdorf's father, and I put the link down there below my video as well. Turns out Bo Bergdorf's father's white. But, what's the problem with that? Well, Bo Bergdorf's father is white, but he also practices the religion of Islam. And he actually praised Allah at the podium at the White House during this press release. So I'll put that video link down there as well for you to watch if you haven't seen it. That explains everything. No wonder the son was able to live amongst the terrorists for 3 to 5 years and not get his head cut off, because he was a Muslim as well. He practiced Islam. He fit right in with those guys. He probably didn't want to even leave. But let me see here what it says underneath the video. Yesterday's evening presser, Bo Bergdorf's father praised Allah when he said Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which means in the name of Allah, most gracious, most compassionate. Reportedly, the Taliban praised Allah right back, saying the trade happened due to the benevolence of Allah Almighty, and the sacrifices of the heroic and courageous Mujahideen of the Islamic Emirate. And I want you to watch that video. When this gentleman starts speaking in Arabic, look at the big smile that, Obama just smiles from ear to ear. He has like a frown on his face, and as soon as he starts praising Allah in Arabic, like Obama's face just lights up with this glow, and it's disgusting. It's repulsive that he is the president of our United States. And here's another action committed by Obama to show you that he supports the Muslim Brotherhood. In another article, Obama admin granted asylum to 1,519 foreigners tied to terrorism. That's 1,500 terrorists that Obama has already put in this country, paid for by you and me, the taxpayer. I'll read this report to you. A disturbing new report obtained by Judicial Watch shows that the Obama administration has granted residency or asylum to 1,519 foreigners who supported terrorism at one time. Apparently, Obama's Homeland Security chief determined that the recently admitted Islamists only participated in terrorist activities while under duress. The Obama administration unilaterally eased restrictions on asylum seekers with loose or incidental ties to terror and insurgent groups in 2014. Prior to that, the foreign nationals would have been banned from the country for supporting terrorist causes. Judicial Watch obtained the numbers from the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services annual report to Congress on the Department of Homeland Security's application of discretionary authority. The figures show that USCIS, the United States Citizenship of Immigration, applied exemptions to 1,519 terror-linked foreigners who applied for discretionary relief during fiscal year 2014. The biggest chunk of exemptions was processed for refugee applications and lawful permanent resident status with 806 and 614 respectively. The rest were processed under DHS programs such as temporary protected status, asylum, and relief through a Justice Department initiative. The bottom line is that the U.S. government is allowing them all to stay in the country with rights and benefits afforded to legal residents despite their terrorist connections and associations. More than half of the candidates rewarded by the DHS last year provided material support to terrorist organizations, according to the DHS report. The others received military-type training from a terrorist organization, voluntarily provided medical care to members of a terrorist group, and solicited funds or individuals for membership in a terrorist organization. After a case-by-case review, Obama's Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Johnson determined that the recent admitted terrorists only participated in these activities while under duress. The Obama administration's decision to ease the restrictions on asylum seekers came amid a report published in February 2014 on asylum fraud. In light of these and other facts, it is thus deeply alarming that the Obama administration would move unilaterally to relax admission standards for asylum seekers and potentially numerous other applicants for admissions who have possible connections to insurgent or terrorist groups. Senator Jeff Sessions, our representative of Alabama, said at the time, "We need to tighten security standards for asylums, not to relax them even further." Sessions also objected to the administration unilaterally altering the Immigration and Nationality Act. What is the point of Congress passing a law if the administration abuses its discretion to say what the law simply no longer applies, he said. According to Judicial Watch, a few months after the INS change was exposed, a U.S. Senator revealed that the administration seemed to have a terrorist hands-off list that permitted individuals with extremist ties to enter the country. Kind of like back in 9/11, how they let all those terrorists into the country so that they could board our planes and fly them into buildings. The lawmaker obtained the information from the internal DHS documents that include communication between U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, asking whether to admit an individual with ties to various terrorist groups. The suspect had scheduled an upcoming flight into the U.S. and was believed to be a member of the Muslim Brotherhood and a close associate and supporter of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which are all groups of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Obama administration recently announced that it will increase the number of worldwide refugees into the United States accepts each year to 100,000 by 2017. So 100,000 refugees every year up until 2017, and probably maybe beyond that. Depends who the president's going to be in 2016, I guess. I don't know. These hearsay stories and such online, and this talk about President Obama getting a third term, I don't know. I'm starting to doubt we're going to have another president after Obama. It just seems like something's going to happen that's going to allow Obama to stay in office for a third term. I wouldn't be surprised. And if Hillary won the presidency, she has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood as well. So I don't know. This is getting really... Sorry I'm eating here, but this is getting really weird. Let me get to my next story here. Okay, so let's move on to the incident that occurred here in Benghazi. We were first led to believe, before the election of 2012, that Obama won, of course, that this attack on the embassy basically came out of nowhere. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It was just a bunch of people that got enraged by a video that was released titled "The Innocence of Muslims." Remember all that? I just spoke about this earlier in my video, but the thing with that video, we were all led to believe this Christian filmmaker made this video. He was practicing his First Amendment rights, made this video. It caused all this turmoil in the Middle East. It enraged all these Muslims, and they attacked the embassies. This led to 22 embassies, U.S. embassies being closed for a few days, and some being closed permanently, therefore causing more turmoil in the Middle East and bringing together these Muslim terrorists and helping their recruiting campaign and all this stuff. Well, some parts of that is true. There was talk about the ambassador. Stories came out that the ambassador was going to whistleblow the fact that the embassy was being used to provide money and arms and stuff like that to the Muslim Brotherhood, and how convenient he ended up dying later on with no help whatsoever from the United States. All of his requests for more security were ignored, and as Hillary Clinton said, what does it matter? But how many of you were aware? And what I'm leading up to here is a false flag event. Yes, the Benghazi event actually happened, but this is a different type of false flag that was created by Obama and his administration using a Muslim. The actual film, Innocent of Muslims, was actually created by and directed by a Muslim. And why would a Muslim agree to make such a film who practices Islam as a false flag to generate and to garner support for ISIS and other terrorist groups in that region against America. So in a story that was published here, I'll read the title to you. Explosive: Filmmaker behind the Benghazi attack found to be a confirmed Muslim agent who worked with U.S. government. Now, I got this story off of shoebat.com. So in a Shoebat exclusive, a woman who starred in the controversial video that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton banned for the attacks in Benghazi has come to us with a stunning revelation that the man who produced the video recently confessed to her that he is a Muslim. And he confessed this twice to her. According to Cindy Lee Garcia, she was one of the actresses that was in this short film, The Innocent of Muslims, who is also a plaintiff in a lawsuit against Google, and Nicola Basley Nicola, the maker of the infamous Innocent of Muslim video, responded yes both times after being asked by Garcia if he's a Muslim. In a recorded phone call with Ben Barrett, Garcia said she contacted Nicola approximately 3 weeks ago and twice asked him if he was a Muslim. Both times Nicola said he was. Listen, I'll put the link below for the article, and you can listen to the recorded phone call that she has with the interviewer here. Lest one doubt the credibility of Garcia's claims once they are reviewed in conjunction with a myriad of discoveries, and they list all these examples here. It constitutes the near completion of an intricate puzzle. Everything fits. Cindy Lee Garcia starred in anti-Muhammad video, says Filmmaker told her he is Muslim. Very soon after the Benghazi attacks, we had reason to believe that not only were administration officials lying to the American people about the video's role in the attacks, but that they were not telling the truth about the administration's role in the production of the video itself. Garcia's revelation now confirms our suspicions about why Nicola contacted Shoebat.com requesting that we cease and desist from exposing the truth about the story. At the time, Nicola admitted to being in contact not just with Iyad, but with an entire family of Muslim fundamentalists after the video, which should have caused him to be ostracized, not embraced. So, here the story was spinned in the United States, and Americans are all up in arms about the First Amendment rights, and we're actually coming to the side of this guy who we thought was a Christian, and vouching for his right to make a film and all this stuff. And here it turns out the guy was actually a Muslim in the first place, creating this basically false flag movie to stir up the emotions of Muslim extremists in the Middle East. And the way this package here had a whole bunch of benefits. It basically acted as a reason for why the Benghazi embassy was attacked and Ambassador Stevens was killed. You know, it gave a reason for Obama and his administration to provide an excuse as to why we need limitations on freedom of speech and such like that in the United States. And it gave a reason for the Muslim Brotherhood to recruit more Muslims into their ranks. Boy, it just had a plethora of benefits for them. I mean, it worked for them perfectly. As first revealed by Shoebat.com, when Nicola was given a lesser jail sentence in 2009 in exchange for his help in securing the arrest of his partner in crime, Iyad Salama, it couldn't have been the true reason for Nicola's lighter sentence. Why? Because in January 2011, Iyad was arrested by the Canadian Peel Police, and the FBI would not take him, despite multiple attempts by Canadian authorities to get them to do so. After several months, the Canadians put Iyad on a plane back to Palestine. So a lot of people were under the impression that the filmmaker was put in jail because of the film, and that wasn't the reason. He had a parole violation. That's why he was sentenced to a year in jail. He never got thrown in jail because of the film itself. So that was another thing the public was misled on. The Obama administration itself is on board with this agenda. Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton chaired the very first meeting in Istanbul on July 15, 2011, as Shubat.com has reported. Moreover, this was approximately the same point in time when Iyad was sent packing by the Canadians and Nakulu began casting for his video. Iyad is a Muslim who is also Walid Shubat's first cousin. So the actual website where I'm getting this information from, the person writing this story is Shubat's cousin. Shubat knows Iyad well. The notion that Iyad would consort with a Coptic Christian doesn't square with reality. This alone lends credibility to Garcia's claim. When taken together with all of our discoveries, Garcia claims to do something far more damaging to the Obama administration. They even further bolster the possibility now, even strong likelihood, that Nicola, in his capacity as an agent of the U.S. federal government, was commissioned by the Obama administration to produce the video. Knowing what you know now, the biggest lies told by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama very well may be just that. The United States government had absolutely nothing to do with this video. This also confirms that evidence reveals that when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she conspired with President Barack Obama to snuff out criticism of Islam, which a contrived and diabolical assault on the First Amendment. Curiously, unprompted, Obama and Hillary so vehemently insisted that they had nothing to do with this anti-Muhammad video, but as it turns out, the opposite is true. They did play a role to counter their claims. What they're talking about here is when Hillary and Obama were speaking in front of the United Nations, they both made claims, and it was on video, that America had nothing to do with the making of this video, and that they personally had nothing to do with the making of the video. So why would they feel impelled that they would have to say that? I mean, if you left the story as it was just, wouldn't it be obvious that it was just some random filmmaker who put out a vile and disgusting film portraying Muhammad? I mean, seriously. So, on September 10th, Ambassador Christopher Stevens boarded a plane from Tripoli to the city from which he would never return alive. The meeting between Stevens and Turkey's Consul General Ali Sat Akin, that concluded little more than 1 hour prior to Stevens' death, has come to signify a troubling level of collaboration between the leadership of countries both men represented. So, hold on a second here. So, and here they list a picture of Christopher Stevens' itinerary for Benghazi. Okay, now 2 days prior to Stevens' arrival in Benghazi, a conference in Istanbul, Turkey that was all but ignored was wrapping up. The conference was billed as an interfaith event entitled The Arab Awakening and Peace in the New Middle East, Muslim and Christian Perspective, and was held on September 7th, 8th, 2012. The final communique of the meeting included assaults on the First Amendment. Participants argued that discourses and languages used in the media, popular culture, schools, and religious centers are extremely important. Religious leaders and decision makers should lead a process of reforming these areas. So basically what you have here is the Muslim Brotherhood, even though they don't call it that in this article right now. They're portraying they're showing their concern, trying to impose their ideology that governments should not insult Islam, and that they should create rules and laws to punish their citizens if they insult Islam. That's basically what that sums up to be. One of the speakers at the conference was Turkey's Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, whose relevance will be made known shortly. As Shubat.com has reported, joining Ahmet in Istanbul were two Muslim Brotherhood spies. One is former chairman of perhaps the most notorious mosque in the U.S., Bassam Estawani, and the other man, named Ratab al-Nabalusi. In the photo below, Estawani can be seen in front of the banner that displays the date September 7th through 8th, 2012, of the conference ignored by the Western media. Bassam Estawani in Istanbul's days before Benghazi attack. So they have pictures in this article. So I'll put the link to the article below so you can read it for yourself. As the conference was taking place in Istanbul, a Muslim fundamentalist in Egypt named Wassam Abdul Awaris, who prior to the fiasco in Egypt stated the plan to attack the First Amendment, called for the criminalization of any defamation of Islam, and then publicly denounced the anti-Muhammad video which the Obama administration would blame for the Benghazi attacks, as Shubat.com reported. A little more than 1 year earlier, another conference was held in Istanbul. It was chaired by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the Secretary General of the OIC, and Turkey's Foreign Minister. It would come to be known as the very first meeting of the Istanbul process. Was the meeting in Istanbul 2 days before Stevens arrived in Benghazi part of the Istanbul process? Remains to be discovered. The location, the theme, and the synchronized efforts in Egypt and Turkey all help make the case. Turkey played behind the scenes, and Egypt was first to spark the riots. Again, U.S. Embassy in Cairo, but there is more to tie our government. The Istanbul meeting that kicked off the Istanbul process. The organization of the Islamic Cooperation, OIC, have been pushing for criminalizing criticism of Islam for years, as far back as 1999, but actually it goes back further than that. However, the objective of the OIC to make illegal defamation of religions needed a moderation makeover, which led to the Istanbul process, kicked off officially in the city of its namesake. Little more than 1 year prior to the Benghazi attack, the agenda was intended to give a facelift to UN Resolution 1618, which was adopted earlier that year by Human Rights Council. So this article, it does go on for a while, and I don't want to spend all the time here reading it, all that stuff, but it basically, it kind of blows the lid off this and adds more, gives you more information on what really occurred in Benghazi. And of course this hasn't made the mainstream media at all, that the maker of this film was actually a Muslim and not this so-called Christian that we were led to believe. So I would encourage you to read that article. I'll list it below this video and such.